The Wolf and the 7 Little Kids. Once upon a time, there was a goat who had 7 little kids. She loved them all dearly. Her only fear was that one day the wolf might catch them. One day, the mother goat had to go into the forest to look for some food. Before she went, she called her 7 little kids to her. "Dear children," she said, "while I am out, take care that the wolf does not come near you. Keep the door locked. If he gets in, he will eat every one of you. He may disguise himself, but you will know by his rough voice and black feet." The kids replied, "Dear mother, do not worry. We'll take good care of ourselves." So the mother goat went off into the forest, leaving her kids at home. It was not long before there was a knock on the door. Someone called out, "Open the door for your mother, dear children. She has brought something back for each of you." But the little kids knew that such a rough voice could not be their mother's. "We won't open the door," they cried. "You are not our mother. She has a gentle voice, but yours is rough. You are the wolf." Then the wolf went to a shop and bought himself a lump of chalk. He ate the whole of it, hoping it would make his voice soft. He then returned to the house and knocked on the door. "Open the door for your mother, dear children. She's brought something back for each of you," said the wolf in a gentle voice. As the wolf spoke, he put his black paws on the windowsill. The kids heard the soft voice and thought at first it was their mother's. Then they saw the black paws and cried, "We won't open the door. You are not our mother. She has not got black feet. You are the wolf." At these words, the wolf ran to the baker. "I have hurt my foot," he said. "Rub some dough in it for me." The baker was afraid of the wolf, so he did as he was told. Next, the wolf ran to the miller. "Sprinkle some flour over my foot for me," he said. The miller thought to himself, "The wolf wants to deceive someone," so he refused. At that, the wolf said, "If you do not do as I tell you, I shall eat you." Then the miller was afraid, and he sprinkled flour over the wolf's foot. For the 3rd time, the wolf returned to the goat's house and knocked on the door. "Open the door, dear children, for your mother," he said. "She has brought something back for each of you." The kids heard the gentle voice, but they were still careful. "First show us your paws," they cried. so we may know if you are our dear mother." The wolf put his paw on the windowsill. When the kids saw the white paw, they thought it was truly their mother. They opened the door wide, and there stood the wolf. The kids were terrified and ran to hide themselves. One ran under the table, the second jumped into the bed, the third into the stove, the fourth into the kitchen, the fifth into the cupboard, the sixth under the washing bowl, and the seventh in the clock case. It did not take the wolf long to find them, and one after the other, he swallowed them as quickly as possible. The youngest kid, who was hidden in the clock case, was the only one the wolf did not find. After swallowing 6 kids, the wolf felt sleepy. He went out into the meadow and lay down under a tree, and was soon fast asleep. Soon afterwards, the mother goat came home from the forest. What a sight met her eyes! The door of the house stood wide open. The tables and chairs had been overturned. The washing bowl had been broken in pieces. The pillows and bedclothes had all been pulled off the beds. The mother goat searched for her 7 children, but nowhere could she find them. Then in despair she called her kids by their names one by one. Not one answered, until at last she called the name of the 7th kid. When she had called its name, a little voice replied, "Dear mother, I am in the clock case." Overjoyed, she took the little kid out of the clock case. It told her how the wolf had eaten the other 6 kids. When the sad tale was told, the mother goat and the 7th little kid wept together. After a while, the poor mother goat, followed by her one little kid, wandered sadly outside into the meadow. There under the tree lay the wolf, sound asleep. He was snoring so loudly that the branches of the tree above him shook. The mother goat walked around the sleeping wolf and saw his huge, swollen stomach. When she looked more closely, she thought she saw something that was moving and struggling inside his stomach. "Goodness me," she cried. "Is it possible that my little kids, whom he swallowed, are still alive?" "Run home quickly," she said to the seventh kid, "and bring my scissors and a needle and thread." Then the mother goat cut open the wolf's stomach. At the first small cut she made, out popped the head of one little kid. As she got further along the wolf's stomach, more and more kids jumped out. Finally, all 6 of them were free and alive. Not one was hurt, for in his greed, the wolf had swallowed them whole. Now happy they were all to be together again, the poor mother goat wept again, but this time she wept for joy. The 7 little goats, in their happiness, skipped and jumped around the sleeping wolf. Soon, however, the mother goat spoke to them. "Go and find some big stones," she said, "and bring them back to me." So the 7 little goats searched for the biggest stones they could find and took them to where the wolf lay. The mother goat placed as many of the stones as she could inside the wolf's stomach. Then she quickly sewed it together again. The wolf lay snoring the whole time and knew nothing of what had happened. After a very long sleep, the wolf wakened and felt thirsty, so he went off to the well for a drink. As he walked, the stones in his stomach knocked and rattled against each other. Then he cried out, "What rumbles and tumbles inside my poor bones? I ate 6 young kids, but they feel like 6 stones." It took him a very long time to reach the well, swaying and rumbling as he went. When he got there, he bent over the water to drink. The heavy stones in his stomach made him topple over. Head first into the well he went, with a frightful plop. The goat and her kids, hearing the frightful plop, came running to the well. When they saw the wolf had drowned, great was their joy. They skipped around crying, "The wolf is dead, the wolf is dead." No longer did the mother goat need to be afraid to leave her kids alone when she went to the forest. The Princess and the Frog. Once upon a time, there lived a king who had 7 beautiful daughters. But of all his daughters, the youngest was the most beautiful. This princess had one favorite amongst all her toys. It was a golden ball. She spent many hours throwing it up in the air and catching it. Near the king's castle, there was a huge, dense forest. Under the big tree, in the edge of the forest, there was a deep, dark pool. On a hot day, it was pleasant to rest under the cool shade of the tree by the pool. The princess often went there to play by herself. The youngest princess used to run about on the grass near the pool, throwing up a golden ball and catching it. One day, however, when the princess threw up her ball, it did not fall into her outstretched hands. It fell onto the grass and bounced into the deep pool with a loud splash. The princess could not bear to think that she'd really lost her beautiful golden ball. She began to cry, and the more she thought about the loss of her favourite toy, the louder she cried. As the princess wept, she heard a voice saying, "Why do you weep, young princess? What is wrong?" The princess looked up to see who was speaking to her. She could not see anyone nearby. There was only a frog sitting on the edge of the pool. So she said to the frog, "I'm crying because my beautiful golden ball has fallen into this deep pool." "Do not cry," said the frog. "I can help you get your ball. But what will you give me if I find it for you?" "I will give you anything you wish for," replied the princess. "You can have my clothes or my jewels or even my golden crown, if only you can find my golden ball." "I do not want your clothes or your jewels or even your golden crown," replied the frog. "I should like you to love me. I want you to let me be your friend and play with you. I want to sit beside you at the table, eat from your golden plate, and drink from your golden cup. I want to sleep in your bed beside you. If you promise me these things," went on the frog, "I shall dive down into the deep pool and find your golden ball. Do you promise?" The princess thought the frog was talking a lot of nonsense. Also, she wanted her golden ball very much. So she said, "Yes, I will promise you all you ask, if only you will find my golden ball for me." At these words, the frog dived into the pool. The frog dived deep into the pool and soon came swimming up again with the golden ball in his mouth. He threw the ball onto the grass. The princess was so happy to see her favourite plaything once again. She picked it up and laughed with delight as she threw it into the air and caught it again and again. Then she turned her back on the frog and the pool and ran away through the forest towards her father's castle. Wait for me," croaked the poor frog. "I can't run as fast as you can." He hopped along behind, trying to catch up with the princess. She did not turn around, but just kept on running. The next day, the young princess was sitting at dinner with the king, his courtiers and the other princesses. As she ate from her little golden plate, the frog found his way into the great hall of the castle. He jumped from step to step up the marble staircase. When he got to the top, he knocked on the door of the dining room. "Youngest princess, open the door for me," he cried. The princess ran to the door to see who was calling to her. When she saw it was the frog, she was afraid. She slammed the door shut quickly and went back to her place by the dining table. The king saw his daughter was afraid. "My child, what has frightened you?" he asked. Is there a giant outside the door who wishes to carry you away? Oh no, dear father, replied the princess. There is no giant outside the door, just a horrible, slimy frog. And what does the frog want with you? Asked the king. Then the princess told her father what had happened in the forest the day before. I promised him that he could live with me, she said, but I never thought he would come so far from the water. Just then, another knock was heard on the door, and a voice cried out, "Youngest princess, hear me call. Remember you lost your golden ball. As you played by yourself beside the pool, I dived into the waters cool. And your ball I found and returned to you. Now please remember your promise true, to take me along to live with you." When a promise is made, it must be kept, said the king to his daughter. Go and open the door. The youngest princess went and opened the door. As she returned to her chair, the frog hopped behind her. When she sat down, the frog said, "Put me on the table beside you, please." The princess hesitated, but the king told her to do as the frog asked. When the frog was on the table, he said to the princess, "Please push your little golden plate nearer to me, then we can eat together from the same plate." The princess did so, but very unwillingly. She barely touched her food, and each mouthful seemed to choke her. The frog, however, enjoyed every bite he ate. When he had finished eating, the frog turned to the princess and said, "Now I'm tired. Please take me to your room, and we will lie on your little silken bed and go to sleep." At that, the young princess burst into tears. She did not like to touch the cold little frog, and she could not bear to think of him beside her in her own bed. Then the king grew angry and spoke sternly to his daughter. "If someone helps you when you are in trouble," he said, "you cannot afterwards turn your back on him. Take the frog with you to your room." So the princess had to pick up the frog and take him to her room. She put him in the corner of the room as far as possible from the bed. Then she got into her silken bed and turned her back on him. Once more the frog spoke up. "I too am tired," he said. "I want to sleep beside you on your silken sheets. Please lift me up." Again the princess began to weep. "If you do not lift me into your bed," went on the frog, "I shall have to tell the king, your father." The princess knew she had no choice, for her father would insist that she kept her promise. So, with tears running down her face, she picked up the frog, climbed back into bed, and put him on the silken pillow beside her. No sooner had she done that than the frog turned into a handsome prince. Not only was he handsome, but he had a kind face, and smiled gently at the startled princess. Then he told her how he'd been bewitched by a wicked witch and turned into a frog. The spell would only be broken if a beautiful princess would take this frog as her companion, live with him, eat with him, and sleep with him. The prince told the princess how he had often watched her playing with her golden ball in the forest, and how he had fallen in love with her. "Dear princess, will you now marry me?" he asked. The princess looked into his kind face and agreed to do as he asked. Then, hand in hand, they went to tell the king what had happened. The next day, they set off in a carriage driven by 6 white horses. They travelled to the kingdom of the prince's father. When they arrived, there was great rejoicing at the return of the prince, who had not been seen for many years. Some time later, the prince and the princess were married, and they lived happily ever after. The golden ball was kept in their palace, inside a special glass case, and resting on a purple cushion.